What's up, guys? We are back with another review, and I got my hands on an early figure. We're going to be talking about arguably one of the biggest releases of the entire year, and something that an entire line of figures rides on. We're taking a look at the recently revealed G.I. Joe Classified 6-inch Snake Eyes convention exclusive set. That's right, this is the big thing, the big new line, and this is from somebody who has never ever been a G.I. Joe collector, but I'm still incredibly excited to take a look at this because 6-inch scale is my thing, and Snake Eyes, well, it's Snake Eyes. So we've got this thing here in a really premium format packaging, and I cannot stress that enough. This seems a little more intense than your standard convention exclusive packaging. So we've got a just slip cover here, and you've got like the wolf emblem and kind of like a samurai style mask down here on the bottom, and then you can pop this off, and then on the inside you've actually got this really nice premium format box. It's like a chipboard. It's not just regular cardboard. It's really thick and sturdy, and you've got that same picture kind of embossed and emblazoned on here and on the back as well. And then you've got, you know, some kanji that runs down the side, and this thing will pop open, and then you've got the inside portion of the box that will give you the little kind of poster, the print that they demoed off at Toy Fair. So this thing's really awesome just on its own. And then we've got actually on the inside itself a display for the figure. So we've got all of the bonus accessories here over on one side, you've got that weapons rack, and then you've got the main event here, which is Snake Eyes in the, what I assume is going to be his normal retail packaging, because this looks very similar to the retail packaging we've seen for Duke and Snake Eyes, Scarlet and Roadblock. So we've got there, and everything here just looks fantastic. Presentation is top notch. Again, it just seems a little bit more premium than normal, and for what they charged for 40 bucks, we are honestly getting a lot of stuff. This figure is loaded on his own, and then he comes with a whole bunch of other stuff, and then we've got just a great box. So if you just want to keep him in this box, you've got a great display piece. But we're going to do it. We're going to pull him out, so let's take a look. And here he is out of the package, the first 6-inch G.I. Joe in the G.I. Joe Classified line, Snake Eyes. And I'm going to come out and say it again, I've never been a G.I. Joe collector. I always had way too much other stuff as a kid for my parents to have bought me Joes. I've always been a fan of the cartoon. I read a lot of the comics for quite a while, actually. So I'm familiar with Joes, but I don't really have a lot of experience with the toys. But when I knew that we were getting a 6-inch line, well, I mean, I was on board 100%. I had to check these out for myself. And this figure is honestly probably changing the game a little bit as far as Hasbro stuff goes. It seems like he's just like any other figure when you kind of look at him at first glance, but when you start moving this guy around, there are a lot of movement possibilities with this figure. He has a lot more going for him than I had originally suspected. So let's, of course, start right there. So the head and neck are independently articulated. So the neck can bob back and forth, and then the head can actually go down. It's a ball peg with a hinge. And then you've got side to side, you've got rotation, but he's got a good range of motion there to look up, look to the side, look down, all of that good stuff. The arms can go out at the shoulder. They, of course, can rotate. You've got a butterfly joint. Mine are kind of tight on both sides, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. They certainly aren't non-functional. They just are what they are. They're kind of tight, but you can get him to kind of reach across his chest a little bit with those. You've got a bicep swivel. We've got double jointed elbows, of course, so pretty good range of motion there. We've got vertical hinges at the wrist and then rotation. And where things get really kind of wild on this figure is the torso and the waist. Because at first I thought we just had our standard waist swivel and a ab crunch, which is definitely not the case, because you've got a regular, well, sort of regular ab crunch, but you've got a ball peg waist. So he can go forward really far, really far. He can also go backwards, like almost unnaturally far. I'm going to take this sword off just to do this. So, you know, you can kind of get him to almost be like in the Matrix almost, like he's flying backwards. Like there's some pretty wild range of motion when it comes to this particular figure. He's got great articulation, especially at the torso. I'm really digging how well he can move. So you can pull him backwards, side to side, swivel all the way around, and then, I mean, the crunch on this guy is fantastic. The legs can go all the way out. You can actually get him to do a full splits. You've kind of got to watch the accessories if you've got him holstered, like I do right now, but he can do full splits. You can kick forward, you can kick backwards. He does have drop-down hips as well, so, you know, very much not a standard Hasbro thing, but I dig that. You've got your thigh cut, double-jointed knees. He goes almost all the way back to kick his butt, pretty close. You've got a very well-hidden boot cut shin swivel, and then you've got rocker, you've got hinges down at those ankles. So he does move really well. I mean, he moves as well as a Commando Ninja should. He's got a tremendous amount of movement potential, a great range of motion, and he just moves really fluidly. That's really what it comes down to. He's easy to pose, and he just works so well. There's a lot of cool, very similar, but honestly kind of different stuff going on when it comes to his joints. Now, as far as the overall look and feel on this guy, well, frankly, I think he looks a lot like what I think of when I think of Snake Eyes. He does not necessarily come across as modernized, so to speak, as some of the other figures that we've seen so far. So he's definitely not classic Snake Eyes, but at the same time, he very much passes for that. And for me, for someone who, frankly, doesn't really care that much about that, it works really well. This definitely comes across as a Commando Ninja. And yeah, that's pretty much what I need out of this figure. I think that there is a lot going on here, from small little areas with paint applications on them, small little sculpted details, and then a decent number of different finishes too. There's a lot of kind of pseudo metallics going on here, some matte, some glossy finishes when it comes to the blacks, and I just think he looks really good. So you've got to start with, you've got, you know, floating pieces here like this strap, which actually is secured in place by the sheath, which you don't have to use, and we'll talk about that more, but it's got nice detail on it, nice paint applications. Of course, use that for a sword. You've got straps on the biceps. You've got the floating double belt piece here, which has some nice paint applications, small little sculpted detail. The sheaths and the holster on his thighs are floating, but they don't really fall down. They're just there. They sit there and they move with the figure, but they don't really work against him at all. You've got a lot of sculpted detail for texture on the pants, you know, pockets on the back of the pants. You've got the shin guards down here with the boots. You've got the knee pads that have a little bit of a metallic sheen that wraps around the knee joint, but then you've also got metallic sheen like kind of on the inside of the thighs there as well. And that kind of plays up with the different finishes on this figure, because you've got a slightly matte torso with more glossy arms to kind of highlight the fact that there's some armor going on there. So like armor plating on the shoulders, you've got the glossy wrist gauntlets and things like that, which look really, really nice. It just helps when the light hits him in a certain way to make him pop a little bit more. And then you've got kind of the harness that's underneath the strap here with the Arashikage symbol on there, which looks really nice. A lot of little paint applications. He's not covered in paint. He's not certainly coated in it, but it works really well to kind of bring out some of the subtle detail when he's not just in 100% black. You've got kind of almost like a muddy color. It's not exactly brown, or it's got hints of green in it in some ways, but you've got that stark black that fades down to the more muddled colors, which work really well for this particular figure. And one thing that I do really like is that the number of pouches that this guy has, so the sheath, the holster, the sheath on his back, he can hold almost all of his weapons at once, which I really dig when it comes to a figure. And just, I mean, sizing on this guy works really well. And we'll do some size comparisons here in just a second as far as other figures goes. But for me, this is a very, very Snake Eyes look. And that's coming from someone who's not a huge Joe collector by any means, but I think he comes across really nicely. Of course, a lot of that is due to the head sculpt on this guy because, well, that's Snake Eyes if I've ever seen it before. A very flat black color for the actual helmet itself with a very metallic sheen for the visor. It works really well. When it hits the light, it does shine quite nicely. It's certainly not vac metal or anything like that. It's not that bright. It's not chrome, but it's very metallic silver. And then you've got the little slits for the mouth hole, but of course not an actual mouth, just some breathing holes. So I think that works really well. The head is sized really nicely, very smooth, very clean, very ninja, nondescript style of helmet, except for the fact that, well, he's got a big silver eye plate there. But the sculpt is great. Paintwork is clean and crisp, and I mean, come on. That's Snake Eyes if I've ever seen him. Now, as far as size comparisons go, here are a couple other figures just to give you an idea of what he looks like stacked up to some, well, more normal figures. So we've got the Genji from Overwatch, rest in peace again, I suppose, which I'm kind of going to size them up because Cyborg Ninja, Commando Ninja works really well. And then you've got the Mando over here. And then just to give you like maybe a different line, so we've got Kylo Ren from Black Series. They all really match up quite nicely, but of course he is going to scale a little bit differently depending on what you're going for. So like here he is with Figuarts Goku, that doesn't really work, things like that. So he's a little bit bigger there because that's out of scale. And then like, you know, here's a Batman from McFarlane, that doesn't work, he's way too big, but he's going to scale really, really well with stuff, pretty much anything from Hasbro. So anything that's true 1/12 scale, he definitely fits the bill there. He works really well with the Overwatch stuff. He works really well with Black Series. He works well with Marvel Legends. All that kind of stuff he's going to fit in nicely. And then, of course, I'm sure he'll fit in just fine with his own line. Now, as far as accessories goes, well, for the base figure itself, Snake Eyes is pretty well loaded. He is very much stocked with weaponry. He does have a lot of stuff in the actual standard package itself. So to start with, we've got the Uzi here, and a lot of these don't really have a lot of paint on them. That's one thing that, you know, might strike some folks as odd. There's not a lot of paint on really a lot of these accessories. A couple of them have maybe more than you might expect, whereas a lot of them, like this gun in particular, it has nothing. But the sculpt is nice. He holds it really well in that hand. You've got a knife over here, which is just kind of a standard combat knife. No paint on that either. We've got his pistol over here, which has a little slot on it, or a peg at the end, I should say, for a silencer, which can also fit on the Uzi if you want. So you've got that, and I should say right now that, of course, all that stuff is holstered on the figure, which I truly love. We've got the sheath for the sword, which does have a decent bit of paint on it. I've already kind of touched on that. And then he does have the sword. There is no paint on this one, however. There's nothing here, but there's a decent bit on that sheath, which you don't have to use because he does have a backpack as well. This is, you know, kind of a combat backpack. It's done up in the same kind of color as the pouches and the harness on the figure with some silver accents. It does, however, have a peg on it for the sheath. So you can use the backpack on its own, you can use the sheath on its own, or you can take the sheath out of his back and put it on the backpack right here, and then peg the backpack in, which I think is a great touch. So you can have both of them on at the same time. So you can kind of mix and match how you want to do that. He does have a couple of extra hands, but he doesn't have any fists, and he doesn't have any non-trigger finger gripping hands. That's kind of a griping point for me, but it's not too big of a deal. We've got a flat palm, kind of karate chop style hand with the claws on the inside there sculpted in, which is really cool. And then we've got a this is a gripping hand, but it's a fist hand almost, but it's sculpted with a ninja star in there, so a throwing star, which I think is really nice. It adds a little bit of flair for that, so you've got a little bit of a different thing going on with this hand, and then you can set him up in a few different poses. So you've got 4 total hands, and honestly, quite a bit of weaponry on this guy. He comes with just about everything that I could really think of, except for maybe a wolf, which at the end of the day, for me personally, isn't necessarily a huge problem. Of course, beyond those accessories, we do have one big thing to talk about, and that's this display piece. So this is the big thing that comes with this set to set it apart as far as extras from the regular retail release. So you've got this big, you know, very much ancient Japanese style of piece here with some wolves, so give you a Snake Eyes nod there. And then you've got this Japanese style artwork that sits in the middle of it. There's not really a lot of paint on this thing. It's basically what you see is what you get, this kind of cream tan color with the black for the actual structure. But the cool part here is not necessarily that. It's all of this stuff on the backside. So we've got all of these weapons here, and none of them have any paint on them, just like the majority of the stuff Snake Eyes comes with. None of them have paint, but the sheer amount of weaponry we get in this complete set is fantastic. He is, with this stuff, he is more loaded than just about any other figure you can think of. So we've got a katana, and a lot of these I don't really know some of the names for some of them. So we've got a katana down there at the bottom, and then you've got 2 combat axes. We've got a double-bladed spear, 2 sai, this really long Odachi style sword almost. I'm not too sure what that actually is. And then you've got 2 fighting sticks almost that have curved blades on the top. So he's got a lot of cool stuff. I mean, this thing absolutely sets the set apart. It gives you a lot more to play with. He can hold on to all of these just fine. And I mean, at the end of the day, who does not want more melee weapons for any figure, but of course for Snake Eyes? So at the end of the day, yeah, I'm impressed with this. This is, again, outside of my wheelhouse as far as toys go, because I've never collected G.I. Joes. It just was that one property that it just wasn't my thing. I loved the cartoon, but I never got into the toys, mostly because my parents bought me too much other stuff. But this figure is a great start to this line. I can only hope that this trend continues with the rest of the wave. This guy moves around so much better than I thought he was going to. After having him in hand, I want some of this articulation in other lines. He just flows really nicely, great range of movement. He looks fantastic. This is very much kind of what I think of when I think of Snake Eyes. You know, again, I'm not the biggest Joe guy on the block, but I am very familiar with Snake Eyes, and this has that look. It has that very classic look while still being very modern at the same time. time. He's not necessarily as Fortnite-ized, so to speak, as a lot of people are concerned about with some of the other figures. And I'm really happy with that because he does look fantastic. And then when you just get down to it, this guy comes with a tremendous amount of accessories in the regular box and the deluxe release. And then on top of that, this particular set just comes in an amazing package. The presentation, the package as a whole is really fantastic, and frankly for the $40 retail price tag, it's a bit of a steal. They are really going hard on this one, and I think they've got a great first attempt in this line, and hopefully this is a sign of things to come. So that's going to do it for this look at the G.I. Joe Classified Convention exclusive Snake Eyes. Let me know what you guys think. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and until next time.